Hello and welcome back to Slick Willy Fly, and what we're going to do today is a Slick Willy Swamp Thing. This is a fly of our own creation. This is deadly on redfish, anything up on the grass flats, anything, if you're fishing thick grass, sea trout, snook, juvenile tarpon, this is a killer. This is an absolute go-to must-have fly. So let's jump in on it. What I have is a size 2 saltwater hook, and I'm going to go ahead and start with some black thread. And this fly can be tied in a series of colors in the tans and browns. I can throw a little bit of orange or pink in, but I tend to stay with the tans and browns. I'm trying to make it look like a crustacean in that Everglades tannic backcountry water. So, I mean, it's awesome water. It's super clean, but it tends sometimes to have a little bit of a tannic color. So for thread, I'm using 75 denier black. And the first material that we're going to put on is going to be a Marabou, strung Marabou in, this is called root beer. No, I take that back. It's just brown. It's called brown. But you can use the creamy colors. This one's called sand. There's a lot of colors that you can use and make this fly. And when I pick my strung Marabou, I try to pick feathers that are not of the best quality, because I'm just going to use a bit of the tail. So what do? I come in and I find that stem, and then I just pop off a little end of the stem just like that. And what that does is it makes this feather look a little bit more wispy. So because I'm using this Sparckle brush, I need to have a little bit of a long tail so that the brush doesn't just eat up the tail. So I'm going to say 2 hook shanks. So that's about a hook shank, and that's about another hook shank. So that's going to be my tie-in point, which is definitely long for me, longer than normal. And I'm just going to go ahead and tie that in and lock that in nice and hard. I don't need to think about bringing this up because the brush will easily make a body. So I just twist and trim. So my next step is I'm going to take a little bit of crystal flash. This is a really cool crystal flash. I don't even know where I got this. It's not gold, it's not orange. The best way I could describe this is copper, but I just think it looks really cool. It's a very unique color. I saw it and I bought it because I just thought, man, that looks cool. So I'm just going to pull out one strand, folding it in half, about as even as I can get it. I'm going to go ahead and put that on my thread about even, and I'm going to go ahead and put it right on top of the hook, and I'm going to use my fingers to just pull it alongside like a V and lock that in nice and tight. And that should keep it pretty good on either side of this fly. Just like that. And then you can open up your loop. And I like this to be a little bit long, so I'm going to leave it just the way it is. Now I'm going to get a silly leg. This is a pumpkin gold. And I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to go ahead and put it on my thread. Bring it right to the top. Lock it. One on each side. Pull in that little V nice and tight, which should keep it right where I want them. One on each side. Just like that. Perfect. The silly leg, I want long, but maybe not quite as long. Let's trim it just a touch. Just like that. Okay. So, what's my next material? My next material is going to be this gold Sparckle brush. And I have a piece that I'm going to finish up because I'm not going to do a lot of turns right now. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and put my dumbbell eyes on. You could do the dumbbell eyes to start. You could do it after. What I'm using is medium brass dumbbell eyes painted yellow. And the distance that I'm using is basically I'm giving myself enough room to just make a little whip finish and a little epoxy head just like that. Leaving myself enough room to put in a wee guard. So I'm just doing right now just some basic wraps, nothing fancy, nothing special. And then once I like it, I go over and under because that does lock it nice and tight. Double check that I like that. I like that, and it's hard. I'm going to give it a touch of zap. Just to make sure that it stays where I want it. A lot of times when I use zap or super glue or anything, I come back and give this a couple more wraps because that does shove that zap deep where I want it. Okay, so now we'll put the Sparckle brush on. I have this piece here that I just want to use up. And the first, I use the Sparckle brush twice, and the first time I use it, I don't give it much. I give it 2 or 3 wraps. It's just to start color. Stroke the fibers back. God, this is such an awesome fly, but it's an easy tie. Now, when I wrap this brush, I don't really wrap it on top of itself. And I stroke back constantly, just trying to give myself a little bit easier time when it's time to free up the fibers. Maybe one more. And now we'll capture the thread, the brush. It's important when you do this that you use a strong thread. Now, you can wring this off, which sometimes doesn't work. Problem is that a lot of times, I'm just gonna cut it. I have my wire cutters. What happens now is it leaves this little metal tag here. So you have to be careful that you push that down and you protect your thread from it. So now I'm going to take a dubbing brush. You could use a needle, you can do anything. And I'm just going to make sure that the fibers aren't all trapped in there. You can do it in both directions, doesn't matter. Nice. Got to give that a little body. So the next step is I take this white EP brush. This one, I forget what this one's called. This is called EP Shrimp Brush. It's actually not called white, it's called clear. But it sure looks white. I have a hard time believing this is clear. And I'm just gonna tie in that wire just like before. And now we're talking 2 turns maybe. This is just to give it a little bit more volume, a little bit more body. So that's 1.5, because remember you're gonna you're gonna tie this in. So now I've done 2 full turns. And we're gonna trap that. And once you've trapped that, just take your wire cutters, come in as tight as you dare, and pull that out. At this point, I take my brush one more time, brush out these fibers. And now I like to take another silly leg and just repeating the silly leg process. Right on top, lock them tight, divide them up, pull them with your fingers, making that V, and lock it in. And they will lay right on the sides where we want them. So now we take that Sparckle brush, and I think that piece is well done. I'm going to just trim this wire. This wire is a little bit too long. We're going to tie in the Sparckle brush. Pull everything to the back. Rubber legs, sometimes I love them. They float and they give you a ton of action, but sometimes they're a pain when you're tying in materials. Get my thread out of the way. Now remember, you got to stroke back on every turn, and you got to be careful not to trap the rubber legs. And this is only going to be three or four turns at the most. That's starting to look like plenty right there. That is plenty. So now I bring my thread back under the eyes, and then I trap the Sparckle brush. A couple good turns just to trap it good. Make sure you don't cut on the same side as your thread, and remove the Sparckle brush. Now I like to make sure I stroke everything back and give this a few more turns just to make sure that everything is trapped well. Then I go back under the eyes, making sure I get as much of these fibers back as possible. And now I'm just going to make a little whip finish, make a little head, and then I'm going to use a little bit of UV resin just to lock this whole thing super hard. This is an awesome fly. You put this thing in front of a hungry fish or a fish period, and you better hang on, because the fight will be on. There's my whip finish. Remove the thread. I'm just gonna clean this up a little here. I got a couple of crazy fibers. Nice. Now normally I would take the dubbing brush right away, but I think I'm going to do the UV resin first. And then I'll come back and do the dubbing brush. I think I'm going to try and singe any wild hairs I have here. That's looking sharp. Like it. All right. Now I'm just going to brush out that last bit of brush that we put on. The rubber legs want to float. And you know what we didn't do? We didn't put a weed guard. Let's go ahead and put a weed guard. We'll reattach the thread. Got ahead of myself. But that's okay. It'll take a second to put a weed guard on. For weed guard, I'm using this hard mono. Which I never cut with my scissors. I have this flat plier here that I can pinch the end of this flat, which I'm going to do just like that. And I give it a little bend. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this on the bottom of the hook. Just like that. And I just lock it in with my thread. Perfect. That came out really good actually. And just to make sure that this weed guard never ever moves, we're going to lock it in with a little bit of UV resin. A lot of people say that you trim your weed guards the length of the hook shank. I like to trim my weed guards so that they're about 1/8 of an inch longer than the point of the hook. That way that the potential weeds will get pushed over the hook of the point of the hook, sorry. So, you know, if we're talking fishing this fly, I'm imagining turtle grass, maybe some sandy patches, snook, redfish in particular, sea trout, because it's a size 2 hook, maybe juvenile tarpon. Hook's a little small for big tarpon. But let's go ahead and trim up the weed guard. Like I said, about 1/8 of an inch longer than the point of the hook. I always trim them a little bit long because you can always trim it more, but you can't put it back. So I always start with them a little bit long. And there it is. This fly is finished. Super simple tie, super deadly. The only other thing that I would do, and in fact I probably will do, is since this fly is designed to ride hook up, this is how I envision the fly. So I'll come in with some scissors. I'll show you actually. And I trim what is the bottom. Making sure that I get all my flash and all my rubber legs out of the way. And I'll come in with some scissors. I do not want to cut the marabou. I do not want to cut any flash or any rubber legs. But I'll come in here and I'll trim up the brush on the bottom, just like that. So now, I think you can imagine, this thing is going to swim a little bit better. It's going to want to ride a little bit more hook up, as it should, and it will sit a little better, a little bit maybe more crabby, if you will. So that's how it's going to sit when it's in the water. You know, the rubber legs tend to float. So even though the rubber legs right now are hanging in the water, they'll float. So yeah, so there it is. The Slick Willy Swamp Thing. Hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. This is an awesome fly. This fly should be in every box. And good luck catching. See you on the next video.